A few days ago, while browsing OLX out of habit, I came across a very cheap film camera, a tiny point and shoot made by Ricoh, Japan, priced at just 300 rupees. Intrigued, I connected with the seller and set up a meeting. The address led me to a posh area in Kolkata, where I found myself at a cathedral. The seller turned out to be the security guard, Edward, a Christian gentleman in his 60s. When I met him, he seemed kind but worn down by life. I checked the camera, a beautifully tiny Japanese wonder, but noticed an issue: the battery door wouldn't close properly. I pointed it out to Edward, and I could see the embarrassment on his face. I immediately felt sorry for mentioning it. I decided to take the camera anyway and asked Edward if I could look around the cathedral. He nodded, and after a peaceful stroll through the prayer hall, I returned to pay him the agreed 300 rupees. To my surprise, Edward refused to take the full amount. "I can't charge you the full price," he said. "The battery door is broken. Just give me 200 rupees. Despite my insistence, he was firm, and I felt a pang of guilt for pointing out the flaw earlier. Here was an elderly man, working a 12-hour shift as a security guard, selling his camera for a pittance. I wondered why he was still working at this age. So I broke my recent vow not to ask people personal questions and asked if he had been a chef, something I guessed from his WhatsApp display picture. Edward nodded, saying he had worked as a chef for 11 years in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. When I jokingly asked if he hadn't saved up, he quietly replied that everything had gone toward his wife's medical expenses. She had passed away a few years ago. As he spoke, I noticed the pain in his eyes, pain he carried without tears. He went on to tell me about his 2 daughters, who live in the flat he bought but don't treat him well. Neither of them is married, and neither calls him Dad anymore. He described the younger one as wicked, and the older one as disconnected. "I've left everything to God," he said, with a mix of resignation and hope. I smiled and promised to keep in touch. I left with the camera, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship with some flaws. Much like the day itself, marked by a heart-wrenching story. I took the camera to Metro Gully for repairs and intend to collect it next Sunday. When I do, I plan to take Edward's picture with it, capturing the man and his story through the lens of his own camera. Would you like to hear more about Edward and his story?